Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Chronicles Unraveled Show. I'm Carla Matthews, the host of today's show. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us. He's here to share his story. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Humberto Adams to the show. Humberto, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mrs. Carla. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and to have the opportunity to share my story.
Can you start now by telling us your story? I and the viewers, our ears are itching to hear it.
Sure. It was my first lecture as a fresher in the college, so I made sure to give my utmost attention and concentration, as I jotted down every word that came out of my lecturer's mouth. Then I noticed a very fair, beautiful young and hairy girl, standing at the entrance of our lecture room, with her index finger lifted up, and looking at the lecturer.
Excuse me, sir, may I come in?
She asked for permission to enter the class, but the man ignored her for a while, and then replied,
All this JJC students coming very late to attend my lectures. Your people don't know me yet. I'm only tolerating you guys, because you are new to the school environment, and might still be having a hard time finding your way around and locating your lecture class. Take it as month of grace from me. From next month, anyone that comes late to my lectures, will wait outside till I finish. And failure to put your name in attendance, will attract penalty. You can come in, if only you are even sure that you are supposed to be in this accounting department.
The lecturer spoke out loud, while facing the beautiful fresher. Then she ran into the class with a very mesmerizing smile on her face. But there was no sit for her to sit down, because every sit in the class had already been fully occupied by other students that came earlier. She stood behind me, but I could no longer concentrate on what the lecturer was saying. I kept turning back repeatedly to guess at her beauty. So, to make things easier for me, I stood up and offered her my sit, while I took her standing position to help me look at her properly. I, who would never stand up from my seat for a pregnant woman to sit, am now even standing up for a young girl. Wow, things have really changed for me. I muttered to myself, eagerly hoping the lecture would end soon, so I could have the chance to talk to her. Several minutes later, the lecture was over, and the lecturer walked impatiently out of the hall. Finally free. Now I'll wait a bit for the class to clear out, so I can talk to her. I muttered to myself, a mischievous smile on my face. While I was sitting there waiting, a male freshman approached me and said,
Hi, I'm Scott, also a first-year accounting student. Sorry I came late to the lecture. Could you lend me your notes, so I can copy from the beginning?
Without saying a word, I quietly reached into my bag, took out my notebook, and handed it to him. But when I turned back to look at the beautiful girl, she was nowhere to be found. Oh no. I should have known this Scott was sent by the devil himself. I should have cast him away when he asked for the notes. But I didn't, and now, look what he has done. I gathered up some courage, and foolishly went to ask the person who had been sitting next to her, but he said he didn't know anything. I ran outside, hoping to catch up with her, but she was gone. So I returned to the class and waited for Scott to finish copying my notes, and give them back to me. Why would a fellow man cause me so much trouble, and ruin my first step towards happiness? How am I supposed to search for this girl all around campus, when I don't even know her name? With no other option, I cancelled all my plans and stayed at school, hungry, and waiting until it got dark, hoping she would show up again. But she didn't. I went home feeling defeated, and my friends scolded me for letting down the landlord I was supposed to meet to pay for an apartment. Dude, you really messed up. You weren't even planning to go to school today so you could meet the landlord. I just told you to quickly attend one lecture and come back. Now you've forgotten everything else. Why didn't you just stay there and forget yourself in school? He reprimanded me like a child, firing off countless questions, but I kept replaying what happened at school in my mind, smiling and thanking him for encouraging me to go to the lecture, instead of waiting for the landlord. Are you starting to go a little crazy? I'm scolding you, and you're smiling, he said, looking at me in disbelief, as if I'd lost my senses. But can you really blame me? Love at first sight is simply magical. Dude, stop looking at me like that. Nothing is wrong with me, I am just love-struck. Or maybe charmed by beautiful girl I saw in the lecture class today. Even though I have not yet been able to talk to her, my mind has not rested since I set my eyes on her. I explained to my friend, and he advised me to erase the thought of women from my agenda as a fresher, otherwise, I might end up being the 001, president of the Carryover Association of Nigeria. I just laughed out loud because he sounded funny. I couldn't sleep properly throughout that night, because I kept thinking about her, and I couldn't wait for morning to come, so I could see her again. Finally, dawn broke just as I had hoped. I quickly got up, tidied my space, showered, dressed sharply, and sprayed on my scent to kill cologne. I hurried to the lecture hall, almost the first person in the entire school. But, unfortunately, I attended all my lectures, and waited around all day, yet she never showed up. What a waste of looking good and smelling nice. I didn't let it bother me though. The next day, I dressed well and wore my best cologne again, but Miss Beautiful still didn't show up. Are you sure that girl wasn't just a figment of my imagination? How come I haven't seen her since that day? I wondered to myself. I finally stopped dressing to impress, and started to let go of her image, assuming she wasn't real. The week passed, and I spent the weekend feeling free of thoughts of her, though deep down, I still wished she was real, and that I'd see her again someday. The next morning, I was still sleeping like a log of wood at 9 a.m., when my friend forcefully woke me up. Oh, is it morning already? I asked, as I tried to lay my head back on the pillow. But when he mentioned it was already 9 a.m., I jumped up and rushed straight to the bathroom. I remembered that the lecturer had said attendance would be mandatory, so I hurried even more. After my shower, I grabbed a random shirt and trousers from my bag, slipped on some sandals, and ran to school, without even checking myself in the mirror. When I arrived, class had already started, and almost all the students were seated. I rushed into the hall with a few other latecomers. I was just settling in, when someone passed me the attendance sheet.
Have you written your name on this attendance sheet? If not, here.
A female voice said, placing the sheet in my hands. When I looked up, it was my Miss Beautiful. To be sure I wasn't dreaming, I asked her to repeat what she had said, and she did. Oh no, it's really her, and today of all days, I'm not even dressed well. How am I supposed to approach her like this? I muttered to myself, as I wrote my name on the attendance sheet. Seeing her again, completely threw me off balance. I couldn't focus anymore, I was too busy thinking about how to approach her in my scruffy clothes, and not so fresh scent. But this time, I wasn't going to let her disappear on me again. So I kept my eyes on her. As soon as the lecturer left the class, I hurried over to where she was sitting, so I wouldn't lose track of her. Luckily, she stood up and started walking out, and I followed her immediately. Hi, beautiful. Hope you enjoyed the class. I'm Humberto, a first-year accounting student.
Nice to meet you, Humberto. I'm Laura, also in the accounting department.
Hearing her response made my heart leap with joy. I couldn't stop myself from blushing like a newly wedded bride, as I walked side by side her without being able to say anything else. As we got to AT Junction, I suspected that she might be walking away soon, so I quickly asked why she attended only one lecture last week Monday, without showing up for other lectures afterwards. She smiled and said,
"Oh, you noticed my absence. This is really amazing to know that someone actually noticed a fresher like me, even though it was my first time of being to the lecture class. Thank you so much. Anyways, the fact is that I was not fully ready to start attending lectures last week. I only sneaked into the lecture room because, when I went to the bank to pay my fees, they asked me to hang around, because I was too early. So after the class that day, I returned back to the bank, and made the payment, before heading home. Don't worry, you will be seeing me more often now, because I have fully resumed today."
I welcomed her once again for resuming fully for the semester, and then asked for her phone number, but she suddenly waved me goodbye and walked away quickly, pretending not to hear my request. One step at a time, my joy knew no bound for having such lengthy conversation with Miss Beautiful, even though I couldn't get her number. At least, one step has been completed, because she now knows my name, and that someone like me exists. I ran back home excitedly feeling full, even though I had not eaten anything since that morning. My friend noticed the joy in my countenance, because I was literally laughing at every meaningful and meaningless things he had to say. "Hey man, take it easy. Are you sure you're not going crazy or something? You've been laughing non-stop, and I haven't even said anything funny." I assured him there was nothing wrong with me. I was just incredibly happy, because I finally met my crush face to face, and we actually talked. "Dude, she gave me her full attention," I said, jumping and dancing, as if I'd just won the lottery. My friend smirked and walked out of the room, leaving me to continue daydreaming. The next day, I dressed my best to impress her and went to school. As soon as she set her eyes on me, she smiled uncontrollably, and offered me the sit next to hers.
"Over here, Humberto, come and sit here,"
she added, as she began to gist me what happened when I had not come to school yet. During our free period in the class, she brought out a pack of biscuit, with a plastic Coke, and started eating.
"Come and join me."
She offered me, but I sternly refused. Our discussion was going on smoothly, until she finished eating, and dumped the waste on the floor of our lecture class. Then the course representative asked her nicely to pick it up, but she refused.
Babe, what's the meaning of this? Can't you see that it is a bad idea to dump those wastes here? Just pick them already, please. I know you are now my friend, but I don't support nonsense. So pick it.
I joined the class rep, and made sure she picked it up. Which got her angry, that I stood against her, and she stopped talking to me, so we went our separate ways. Days and weeks passed by, and I was hoping she would start giving me a welcoming face again, but she didn't. I tried hating her just to get her out of my mind, but I couldn't. The more she gave me the angry attitude, the more I fell deeply in love with her. After our first semester holiday, I approached her. "Hey babe, what's up? Is this how easily you get upset? Something that happened a while ago, and you're still holding a grudge, isn't it enough?" I asked jokingly, but she ignored me and tried to walk away. But the romantic in me quickly held her hand and pulled her closer, playfully asking for forgiveness if I had offended her. She smiled, putting on an act, and said she needed time to decide whether to forgive me or not. Love can truly make a man in white clothing step into the mud. Ordinarily, I would have already forgotten about this kind of girl, especially since she chose to hold a grudge, just because I corrected her. But with the depth of love I have for her, I might just keep trying, until she becomes mine. After our last conversation that I begged for her forgiveness, I didn't talk to her about anything again, even though I still had eyes on her. I started giving her the hello hi treatment, as I studied hard, and became the best accounting student in our class, which made all accounting lecturers and fellow students continuously sang my praise within and outside the department. One day, I was just sitting on a chair in a play field, with my eyes fixed on my notebook, when I heard a female voice saying,
"Good afternoon, Humberto. You have forgotten about me, haven't you? That's not good."
"Laura, how did I forget you? I haven't forgotten you at all. I just thought I'd give you some space to be as mad as you wanted," I replied, and she laughed out loud, sitting herself down beside me. Then, she praised me for being the best in the class, and suggested that we start studying together. At that point, I was seeing her just like any other female student. My desire to be with her had faded since the day she said she needed time to think about forgiving me for correcting her, instead of simply letting it go. Either way, I accepted her proposal to be my study partner without a second thought. Life isn't hard, it's only women who make it seem that way. We became study partners. From being study partners, we became best friends. Best friends who couldn't stay away from each other, and it was beginning to create distance between me and my male friend, making him uncomfortable, too. Although I had planned on renting my own apartment during the first week of the semester, he stopped me from going through with it, after I missed my appointment with the landlord, because of this same girl. "You already missed your appointment with the landlord, so I think you can keep staying with me, as long as you need to, even if it means splitting the rent. I'd get bored without your company anyway," he told me, and I accepted his offer right away. That was how we started living together. With the way he's frowning and sounding harsh these days, I think he might throw me out anytime soon, if I'm not careful. I became more careful, in order not to make my friend throw me out of his house at this final year. So one day, my friend had just finished cooking, when someone called, and informed him of tests going on in his department. Without delays, he ran to school, without even testing the food. Then Laura called and complained about being hungry, so I asked her to come over to my house, so that we will look for what to eat together. She came to the house, went straight to the kitchen, and ate my friend's food, because I went to the bathroom. Few minutes later, my friend came back and started shouting, "Humberto, why did you eat my food? I have had enough of this rubbish, I can't take it anymore, come and leave my house." Before I could deny the allegation, he quickly started throwing my things outside.
"Is not Humberto that ate the food? I did. I came in, while he was still bathing, and you were not around, so I thought it was his food. Sorry about that. Humberto, you can come to my house and stay, since he doesn't want you here anymore,"
she said, while picking my clothes from the ground, and parking my bags. I would have never believed that Matthew, my only childhood best friend, would have actually thrown my luggage outside in this manner, and over a small issue, like food. It hurt so much, but I had no other option than to leave. So I quietly picked what was left on the ground, and followed Laura to her house. Then later that night, I called my parents and informed them of what went wrong, and how another male friend took me in. So they said some words of prayers for the supposed male friend that took me in, and then begged me to manage with him for some time, till month end, for them to raise some money for rent, and I agreed, knowing fully well that I lied to them. So while waiting for the rent to come, me and Laura started sleeping with each other constantly. Then the rent came, but she suggested that we use the rent for something else, and continue staying together, considering that we were already few months to graduate from school. But I rejected the idea immediately, because it has already been stressful for me, hiding from people's eyes every day, so as not to be seen living in a woman's house longer than necessary. She gave me a lot of reasons to keep staying with her, and tried all possible best to convince me about it, but I couldn't bring myself to accept her pleas, so I rented my own room as a man, and made her move in with me, instead of me staying with her. After all, none of our parents or relatives had ever paid us visit on campus since we started, so they might never find out that we were cohabiting. We started cohabiting, living together, and doing everything like husband and wife does. Everything was going on well, until 2 weeks to our final exams. She started throwing up, sleeping, and constantly getting sick, after buying drugs from the counter to treat malaria and typhoid, but nothing changed. She went to the hospital. They ran some tests, which proved that she was pregnant. 2 months gone. That was the saddest good news I ever heard. Jesus. Why will you get pregnant now? What are we going to do? I cried out loud and got very worried. We thought of terminating the pregnancy, but I was scared of having to answer questions if something were to go wrong. I thought of committing suicide, because of fear of what my parents will say, but the fear of going to hell automatically stopped me from doing it. So we managed till after our final papers, and I helped her with her project and mine, before telling my mom about it, and she was very mad at me. She told my dad, and they both promised never to send any money to me again.
Humberto, after everything we talked to you about.
Humberto, how could you? After all the guidance we gave you, after all the prayers and the warnings, is this what you do? I'm beyond disappointed.
We taught you better than this. Do you understand what this means? As a Christian, you know that you're supposed to save this kind of commitment for marriage.
We put our trust in you. We sent you to school with clear instructions, with everything you needed to focus on your studies, and you repay us like this. What happened to all the values we raised you with? I'm sorry. I didn't want this to happen. I don't know what else to say. Sorry, doesn't change what you've done. You ignored everything we taught you. You disregarded the faith we raised you in. This is not the behavior of a responsible Christian man.
How do you think this reflects on us, Humberto? On our family, we trusted you. We prayed for you every single day, hoping you would stay on the right path.
Whatever you do, you will not consider abortion. That child is a life, a gift from God, no matter how it came about. Actions have consequences, Humberto. We're done supporting you financially. If you're making adult decisions, you'll have to live with adult responsibilities. You need to understand the seriousness of what you've done. You've not only let us down, but you've also disappointed God. They both warned me sternly never to consider abortion, saying that it's against Christianity, and also a sin before God. But the words brought big relief to me, because I was always afraid of how my parents will take the matter. Thank God they finally know about it, and I love Laura. We can just start a family from here. Me, Laura, and our little son or daughter together. Happily ever after. When Laura came back home, I told Laura what my parents had said, and she was also sad, thinking about what her parents will do to her, when they eventually find out about the pregnancy. So I gave her a passionate hug, till her mood got better. How did I even get myself into this mess when I am jobless, and totally surviving by my parents? How I wish I told my mom the truth, that I was moving in with a woman, when Matthew drove me out of his house. Maybe she would have warned me about it, and things would be different now. I muttered to myself, while feeling really sad without letting Laura notice my sadness. After a while, I promised myself to do everything humanly possible to care for my woman, and the coming baby. So I started doing menial jobs like bricklaying, farming, weeding of farmlands, and so on, while we wait for our college certificates and youth service. After saving some money, I begged my parents, and they followed me to Laura's village, where I introduced myself to her people as the man that impregnated her, and would come to marry her in no distant time. Her parent and village people frowned bitterly and expressed their disappointment at her for getting pregnant out of wedlock. Nonetheless, they couldn't undo what was already done. So they accepted my drink, with the warning that coming back to collect list and payment of the bride price shouldn't take longer than necessary. And I returned home with my woman feeling happy and relaxed that both families has known about the pregnancy and union, as I continued to struggle tirelessly hard to provide all the needs of my pregnant wife and the forthcoming baby. Time passed quickly, and she delivered a baby girl smoothly through CS, and everyone was happy that she and baby made it out alive. We continued to live happily as a family. Few weeks after her delivery, her people began to call me repeatedly, to remind me of the need to come and marry their daughter legally, even though they knew how much I had spent on their daughter's CS, so I told them there was no money for marriage at the time. Even our colleagues that graduated the same time with us, had already been posted for service, but because we didn't have money to do our clearance, we were not mobilized. So after thinking hard about my in-laws' constant disturbance on marrying their daughter, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. Hello my in-law, I hope you all are doing fine. Thank you for being patient with me all this while. I don't have money to come for marriage yet, because all the money I saved so far was spent on my wife's CS, and for buying of other baby items, and all the money I am making now is to make sure my wife and baby remain comfortable till we get something better. Don't worry sir, I will keep praying, and working very hard, until I do the right thing, by marrying her legally. I said to my father-in-law over the phone, and also wrote it as text message and sent to him, in order to make them understand the situation better. Time flew with great speed, and few weeks to our baby's 2 years birth date, Laura my woman became mysteriously ill. She just complained of cold and headache at night, and the next day, she died. Is that how people die easily, or Laura was just different? I could never have imagined that someone as young and beautiful could die so suddenly. I cried out, and then informed her people about it. Immediately the information of her death reached her family. They called me over for a meeting, and I obliged. They gave me a list worth $1,500 non-negotiable amount, as bride price amount to be paid for Laura. After completely paying the amount of money on that list, you will have to buy full wedding attire, wedding gown for her, and suit for yourself, cook food and invite people to witness that you have legally married her. Since you couldn't marry her when she was alive, and she had a kid for you, you can't escape it now, because it's our tradition, and if you delay too much, you will join her. Where will I get such ridiculous amount of money to pay, when I don't even have a tangible job, sir? Please reduce it, have mercy on me. I knelt down and cried uncontrollably like a baby before my in-laws, but they all walked out on me. The idea of fully marrying and wedding a dead person sounded awful, but I had no other option than to oblige. Especially when they emphasized that I will join her, if I don't pay, and do everything immediately. So I returned home and collected loans from family members, friends and banks. I paid her bride price, and every other item that amounted to $1,500, before my in-laws' fixed date for the wedding proper and burial. So I printed invitation cards for families and friends as commanded, bought all her wedding outfits, and suit for myself, paid cooks, and decorated the compound for a wedding. Then the day came, her body was taken from the mortuary in a casket, dressed as a bride to her father's compound, where I was waiting on suit and tears. They asked me to stand next to her, while they did some incantations, before the church took over. After everything, they buried her. This was the worst torture of my entire existence. The push around by my in-laws almost killed me, but I had to stay strong for my daughter. At last, I completely did everything about the marriage as instructed by my in-laws, and they gave me go-ahead to carry my daughter back, and move on with my life. We all said final goodbyes, because I will never have anything to do with such people ever again. Till today, I am still repaying the loans I collected to wed a dead woman. If only I abstained from premarital sex. If only we did not cohabit before marriage. If only I was patient enough to wait till the right time before indulging in adult stuffs. If only I was truthful to my parent from beginning. If only. Maybe I would have not gone through all what I went through, and I would have graduated well, and been in a better position by now. I have so many regrets now. No wonder they say, had I known, always comes at last. Please learn from my story and mistakes. Don't hurry in life, take everything one step at a time. The thought of how the whole incident took place still haunts me sometimes, and has made me fear to get involved with other women after Laura. There is a lot of blessings and respect that comes with doing things orderly in the right way, as it is supposed to be. There's no need to rush.
The story of Umberto's situation offers several moral lessons about the importance of self-control, responsibility, and the potential consequences of actions taken outside the guidance of faith. Umberto and Laura's relationship shows how strong emotions and desires can lead to decisions that might conflict with spiritual values and result in unintended consequences. The Bible encourages believers to exercise self-control as a means of honoring God and protecting themselves from avoidable hardship. Proverbs 25:28 says, "Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control." Self-control helps us make choices that align with our beliefs, avoiding outcomes that bring guilt, fear, and disappointment. In Christian teachings, sex is seen as a sacred act meant to strengthen the bond between a husband and wife, within the framework of marriage. This view is supported by 1 Corinthians 6:18, which says, "Flee from sexual immorality." Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. According to this scripture, sex outside of marriage is a form of immorality, because it disregards the sanctity of marriage, a covenant meant to reflect God's love and commitment. Additionally, Hebrews 13:4 states, "Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral." This passage emphasizes the importance of keeping sexual relationships within marriage as a way to honor God and maintain purity. In the story, Umberto's parents raised him with Christian values, encouraging him to avoid premarital sex and focus on his studies. By not following this guidance, Umberto faces not only his parents' disappointment but also the reality of having to take responsibility for a child while still a student. His parents' reaction reminds him of the weight of his choices and the consequences of stepping outside the path they hoped he'd follow. In Galatians 6:7, it says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap." This verse reflects the idea that actions have consequences, and going against God's guidance can bring difficulties that could have been avoided. While the story highlights the challenges that come from choices that stray from God's intentions, it also reminds us of the possibility of repentance, and seeking God's guidance to make things right. 1 John 1:9 assures believers that, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins, and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. This means that even when mistakes are made, there's always an opportunity to turn back to God, seek forgiveness, and take steps toward a better path. In summary, the moral lesson of this story is, sex before marriage can lead to complex challenges, emotional hurt, and disappointment, as seen in Umberto's situation. The Bible teaches that sex is a sacred bond meant for marriage, which provides a secure foundation for raising children and building a life together. By waiting until marriage, believers honor God's plan, protect themselves from regret, and build stronger, more committed relationships.